Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I think we'll go ahead and get started because we're about that time. Appreciate you making some time here. There was a brief moment of sunshine earlier. I don't know if anybody noticed. I was a little surprised that there were still people here and everybody didn't run outside as soon as the sun shone. I understand there hasn't been sun in Northern Europe since August. So I was pleased to be here for a little bit of it. My name is Tim Ogden. I'm the Managing Director of the Financial Access Initiative. I was just mentioning I'm a little concerned. I got mine written all the way out on my name tag and everybody else got the shortened versions. But then I learned this really fascinating fact that this is, Lerato is not from IMBE, she is from IMBE, which is you get a refund of your conference fee if you know what IMBE is. Anyone? Yeah, what is it? Oh no, that doesn't count. No. To be clear, no. But we'll come back to that. Today's session is about small businesses, which might not seem unusual, but it is around the kinds of services that are possible to offer in support of businesses that have already made a jump. The businesses that we all hoped originally in the microfinance idea was growing businesses that are increasing in size and increasing in their number of employees and their impact in their community. And so I am here because FAI has just completed a study of what we call small firms, and we use the phrase small firms to distinguish from the MSME, SME, small and growing business, SGB, gazelle, all the various phrases that you hear used, often with radically different definitions. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that most governments publish statistics about MSMEs, and their definition of MSME ranges from 0 employees to 500 employees, depending on the country. Some countries, it only goes down as far as 50, and anything below 50 is a different category. And some countries, anything under 5 is a different category, and some countries 0 is a different category from 1. And so we invented our own phrase, small firms, to capture firms with at least 1 paid worker up to 20 paid workers to understand that group. So I'm going to present a little bit about what we found and how we went about doing that research. But that's really as a platform to talk about the work that the others joining me today are doing and thinking about, not just about what we can learn about those firms, but how we can actually support those firms that are a vital part of the economies of their countries. So I think we're there, and we had the clicker. So can I use it, Hyman, for this part, and then I'll pass it back down to you. So to start off with, I mentioned I'm Tim Ogden, Managing Director of the Financial Access Initiative at NYU. Joining me is Lerato Lehoko from IMBE, which is an indigenous African fruit that's small and orange, right? Weselina Angelow from the World Savings Bank Initiative, not WSBI. Anne-Marie van Swinderen from LIFT, which is LIFT, although it also stands for Low Income Financial Transformation. And Anne-Marie was a partner of ours in the Small Firm Diaries in the 7 countries that we'll talk about in a moment. And Hyman, I am going to mispronounce your last name, Ilbetal. Why does it say always Ilbetal in your emails?
Because in Ethiopia, we don't really use last names. We just used our father's name. But since when I moved, I needed to use a grandfather's name as last name. So.
There we go. See, I have learned something really important today. This man I've worked with for several years, I had no idea what his surname was. And Hyman also with LIFT works on the technology platform that LIFT has developed in some of this support. So quickly, I want to show you some of what we did in the Small Firm Diaries to lay the groundwork for what we'll be talking about today. So the Small Firm Diaries is a study in 7 countries across the world. You can see them on the map, ranging from Colombia to Fiji. I have to say one of the great wins of my life is convincing a donor to pay for us to do field work in Fiji. But we were supported by the Gates Foundation, the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, Argidius, and UNISCAP to do this work. And as I mentioned, it's using a diaries methodology, which I presume most of you are familiar with, where we visit the participants every couple of weeks for a full year, trying to gather the full range of their financial transactions. And here focused on firms in 3 industries, but always in low-income neighborhoods in these countries. So a little over 100 firms in all countries except Fiji. And those 3 industries being light manufacturing, agri-processing, and services. And we chose those 3 industries because they are ones that could plausibly see significant employment growth over the course of a relatively small amount of time. I want to be clear that we don't think that retail is unimportant, but for most of the kind of retail establishments that we see in these environments, the idea that they would grow from 2 to 20 employees over the course of a year is pretty unrealistic. And so we were trying to really understand these firms that have employees, have paid workers, and could plausibly grow fairly quickly in a relatively small amount of time. So there's a lot more, and you can find a lot more on the Small Firm Diaries website. I want to hit sort of 4 key findings that we have, and then 3 recommendations that come out of that work before we talk about what the other panelists are doing. So 4 key findings. One is these small firms really are a different and distinct group. They are different from the traditional microenterprise that is only family-based and has no paid workers. They are more banked in the traditional sense of the word banked. Almost all of them do have multiple formal financial accounts that they use at least once over the course of the year. Most of them are registered in some way. They may not be fully formalized, but they are at least registered in some way. And they are not the kinds of firms that are just starting up. They're long-lived. They've been there for a while already, and they have pretty significant amounts of capital already invested. Capital that did not come from microcredit, capital that came from other sources within the family or other providers. Second is the idea that there is this large group, the largest group, in fact, of these businesses that we call stability entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we ask them in the course of the study is, what are your aspirations? Do you want to grow? And the vast majority of them say, yes, we started this business to grow. We have growth aspirations, but we also allow them to choose other things. And again, the largest group also choose stability as a goal. And when we sort of look at the reality of their businesses, it's quite comprehensible why you would choose both growth and stability, which, you know, in a traditional Silicon Valley venture capital, like that's the opposite. Those two are like total opposites. But these firms face a tremendous amount of volatility in revenues and expenses and profits. And that has a big effect on their businesses and what they can do. And so what they want is not the kind of super rapid growth that we've often heard talked about, where you, the language and idea of gazelles or other sort of super rapid growth. They actively avoid that kind of growth because they don't have the resources to take on the additional risk than they already face that is necessary for that kind of growth. So they are looking for growth, but they're looking for growth at the 5% and 6% and 10% pace, not at the 100% pace. And so we choose the words, the phrase stability entrepreneur very deliberately, using entrepreneur in its traditional sense, which is this is a person who took a risk to start a business with the intention of growth. These are not reluctant entrepreneurs that we've heard it described in other studies. They are out there trying actively to grow their businesses, but they want to do it in a way that yields more stability. Third, the barrier to them is not investment capital. They already have the assets. The barrier to them is working capital. So when we ask them, many of them, would you like a loan? They say no. And when we go in and uncover that, what we find is what they don't want is the loans that are available in the market. These loans that are designed for capital investment, loans that are designed with fixed payments over a course of a long term. And what they do want is access to short-term capital for inputs for raw materials. And then when we go back to our financial diaries data and we look at their very largest expenses, things that they themselves call investments, and then we figure out what was that investment, 90% of the time it's raw materials. And so their challenge is not how do I acquire a new machine, but how do I make sure I've got the working capital for the inputs to put that machine to work. And then fourth, the workers in these businesses are the targets that we all care about. These are very poor households, and the jobs that they provide in these businesses are critical to those households. These households that work for them don't have very many other sources of income, but the income that generated by the jobs is just as volatile as the businesses. So the average firm in the study has on the order of 2 paid workers at a time during the course of the year, but 6 different people filling those jobs. And that is not because I have a worker every month of the year and I just trade them out. It's I have a worker in January, I don't have any work for them in February, so that person goes and looks for something else, and then I have to find somebody new in March, and then April, and then I don't have anybody for a month, and then I go find 2 people because I've got a big order. And you can see that's bad for the business and it's bad for the workers. And so focusing our efforts on how to help these businesses have stable growth has lots of potential channels for benefit in their communities. So I've sort of talked about these things already in terms of recommendations. One is I think more of our programs need to be designed for the stability entrepreneur, not for the gazelle. I'm not saying that gazelles don't exist, but they are a very small portion, and there's not very much evidence that we can identify them very well, or that those gazelles even have much success over time. But stability entrepreneurs are a big part of the question, and we should be designing credit products around stability. We should be designing business support programs around stability entrepreneurs. Second, we do have this really big challenge that providing working capital financing, it's not that nobody ever thought of this. It's an incredibly difficult product to offer sustainably. I think of the phrase from Ernest Hemingway, who was asked how he went bankrupt, and he said, gradually and then all at once. And that is the way that working capital lending works. If you have experience doing working capital lending, it's everything looks great up until the moment that the entire line of credit gets drawn down and the person disappears, right? It's hard to develop a risk model when that's the product mix. So there's, I think, a lot of possibility for innovating how we offer those products, how we do risk and credit models for working capital, but that is the desperate need of these businesses. And then finally, we do need to pay attention to the workers. While it is true, I hope that many of these businesses, if we help them stabilize, will provide more stable employment. I think we have to be honest with ourselves that not all of those gains are going to be passed down to the workers, unless we design programs specifically that target the workers themselves to help them achieve stability, help them gain the skills that make them more valuable to keep around. And that's how we make sure that the impact of what we do sort of spreads more broadly through the community. So I'm done with my monologue, and I'm just going to ask questions from here on out. What we're going to do now is each of these organizations is doing work on how do we deliver on some of these ideas? How do we support these kinds of businesses? And in using diaries as an element of that to both help the businesses understand themselves and understand what they need and design around their programs. So I'm going to turn it over to each of them to talk about what they're doing. And then we'll come back around with a set of questions, both from me and from the audience, to help draw out some other lessons. Does that work for everybody? I hope so, because that's what we're doing anyway. So the first thing we do have is a video from Lerato, right? And Heimanat's going to come over and play that for us.
Million children in South Africa, aged between 3 and 5, do not currently attend any early learning program. This lack of access is most pronounced in the poorest regions, where a staggering 66% of children are missing out on early education. Interestingly, the South African government does not have a direct delivery system for early childhood development. Instead, these services are primarily provided by small, owner-operated businesses that largely depend on parental fees to cover their operating costs. IMBE innovates enterprise solutions aimed at advancing the financial resilience of informal micro-enterprises. We serve women sole proprietors who have founded their ECD enterprises within the communities they reside in. Most were drawn to ECD businesses by their passion to work with children. However, most often lack foundational business acumen and financial capability to run successful and resilient micro-enterprises. Moreover, they are excluded from most forms of enterprise support due to their informality and marginal commercial prospects. In 2021, IMBE launched an Enterprise Accelerator program that aims to support ECD businesses to increase and stabilize their income. Our program consists of 1. Entrepreneur capacity building, 2. Improving access to capital, and 3. The reduction of key operating expenses. Entrepreneur capacity building is focused on 2 broad areas. 1. Foundational business management practices, such as recruiting children, securing food, collecting fees, and 2. Building financial capability. Financial capability is arguably the most important capability that micro-entrepreneurs require because their operating margins are so minimal that small financial management mistakes can result in business losses and often business closure. We believe that financial record keeping is foundational to building financial capability. That is why we introduced Finbit as a tool for financial record keeping for our entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are offered free access to the app and in-person support to build proficiency. Their diligent use of the app makes them eligible for investments into their businesses.
My name is Tulelen Makubu. The name of my ECT is Isifundo Esihle Early Learning Center.
My name is Eugenia Ndaba. The name of my ECT center is Minete Daycare Center.
The Finbit app has helped me a lot to learn how to save, how to manage my money, how to record everything that I do.
We're shown how to do transactions, how we can manage our expenses, our incomes, everything. We're able to save also using that Finbit app. At first, I wasn't able to save money because I would just use my money carelessly without thinking that I need to save for building classes, for resources outside. At first, when I joined the app, I don't only one class. And it was very full. The kids were in a class, they couldn't move. Also, it was just too much for me. It was also frustrating for me. So what we did is, after the app, I was able to save money and build another class.
My role as a TSO is to help practitioners like Ma'am Tulelen and Ma'am Eugenia to track down their finances every week.
My TSO has helped me a lot because she's always calling us, reminding us to record, and then she's always there, step by step, taking our hand step by step.
She would come in and assist with the app, showing me how to do transactions. If maybe I'll get lost at some time and understand how to do transactions, she would come in and show me each step by step, what I'm supposed to do. And also the nicest thing about the app that is data free. You don't need to have data to use the Finbit app.
For me, using the app, I've gained a lot. They've painted my ECT outside, of which I can attract a lot of kids. So from 3 months since they've painted, I've gained 4 more kids, and then I've got the jungle gym.
I would like to thank IMBE for this opportunity of having to help practitioners to understand the app much better and just helping them to track down their finances because they can now grow their business and save.
I just want to thank the opportunity of knowing IMBE and teaching me about the app and how to grow my business and taking me to the workshop, see a lot of people, networking with a lot of people. So I just want to say thank you so much to IMBE. Keep up the good work, not to me, to all of the women power.
So, Lerato, I mean, interesting in that
Approximately
middle row.
1.3 million children in South Africa aged between 3 and
How many children? You're trying to find this middle ground of business training that actually has an impact in the short term for businesses, so they see some value in what they're doing. This has been a challenge for Liz. So tell us a little bit more about how you came to do this program and how it's working.
Sure. So I won't repeat the context that's shown in the video. We do have an access challenge for ECD in South Africa. We've also got the highest unemployment rate in the world. So we saw these two challenges as two opportunities to grow employment and enterprise opportunities while closing the early learning access gap. We've also got a very established business support ecosystem in South Africa, but it excludes informal businesses and small businesses. And that's why we basically launched IMBE and the Accelerator program. I think just to give you a summary of the profile of our customers, so 100% of them are women, they're Black women, average age of about 45 years old. Their businesses, when we engage with them, on average have 22 children, which is half of the national average. And I liked your distinction of growth entrepreneurs and stability entrepreneurs. We reach out to those who do want to grow their businesses, but also stabilize their income because there's big cyclicality in their revenues. In terms of what we're learning from the data, right? So the reason we introduced FinBit is it's obviously very important for us to be able to measure the impact that we're having on the businesses. So the app enables us to see the financials of these businesses and how they're growing. But as you can see, financial record keeping in and of itself is an effective intervention for the entrepreneurs. Once they start seeing where all their money is going, they become more cognizant and more responsible with using their monies. Just to give a sense of the economics of these businesses, right? So monthly top lines about 6,500 Rand, 20 Rand to €1 today. So you can do the math. And the net profits are about 1,700 Rands per month. So these are really, really marginal economics of businesses. I think having this tool has also given us an important advocacy tool. There are many stakeholders who work in the ECD ecosystem in South Africa who don't have a clear understanding of the business economics of these businesses, and just sitting on this data has given us an important advocacy tool to advocate for an increase in subsidies from the state, for instance. Just finally then on financial services usage, because we're also quite interested in that. So South Africa has very high bank account holdings, and in our base of customers, 96% of them have a bank account. Interestingly, 42% of those have 2 bank accounts. So we see this compartmentalization of finances by using different bank accounts. 71% of our customers have savings, formal and informal, and insurance. And obviously the story of insurance in South Africa is most of it is funeral insurance. So 86% of those who've got insurance in our base have funeral insurance. We see very low holdings of short-term insurance. And then half have access to credit, formal and informal. I'm going to pause there. Thank you.
So Lerato, one quick question from me on this, and I don't know if you've looked at this, but one of the stories of Diaries overall is it sort of uncovers things that are happening that we don't really think about are happening and the complicated. Do you have a sense of the credit that these women are extending to their customers? That presumably their customers are also subject to a lot of ups and downs and may not be able to pay all the time. Are they cutting people off on the day they don't pay, or are they also serving as sort of informal credit to the households in their neighborhoods?
Yeah, so about 70% of our customers last academic year reported disenrollments from children, and most of those were without notice. So the economic situation obviously strains parents, and we find parents moving around different facilities. I think, so we don't have accurate data on how much credit is extended to parents, but we see it in the fee collection volatility that parents are struggling to pay on time every month.
Yeah, so there is a liquidity challenge for them as well of have I been paid, and when will I be paid, and how do I meet my expenses of running the business in the short term? Weselina, let me turn to you and the work that I learned this morning. Anybody want to guess what percentage of the world is in the catchment area of WSBI members?
Is there a price on it?
Yeah, well, yeah, but you don't get to win. Tell us.
Yeah, so WSBI serves 1.4 billion customers worldwide, many of them being micro and small enterprises. So we are a very old organization. We're around for 100 years. We're a global platform of socially committed savings, retail, but also microfinance banks. The network operates in 69 countries around the globe. And so that explains the large number of customers the network is serving. We are a Apex organization, so serving the interests of the member institutions by helping to drive inclusive, sustainable services, but also promote digital innovation and better regulation. And part of the advocacy work that WSBI does is to be part of the global discussion in how to help overcome the financing gap of small businesses. So, for example, we are an active member of the Global SME Finance Platform. And just recently we launched, or we participated in the launch of the Wi-Fi Code, which is a World Bank-led initiative to bring more women in enterprises into finance. So there is a huge potential of 400 million women in enterprises that lack access, that provide a huge opportunity to bring more people into jobs. It is a global stakeholder effort that will start collecting data-driven evidence from the financial sector to help identify those gaps, and WSBI as a global network will participate in the data collection through the network of its member institutions. And we also hope to support the implementation of the gaps that will be identified through the Wi-Fi Code initiative. The implementation work at WSBI is done by the financial development practice, Scale to Save. We are working with our network of member institutions to support them in improving products and services, but also to better understand how, what, when, and why people make use of financial services, and what are the services that contribute to resilience and help create jobs. We traditionally would be providing expertise, engage in research on the demand side, and engage in dissemination activities, also to have our network of members benefit from the learning. Our new business model foresees that we will also engage closer with development finances, investing with grant financing, for higher impact results. But it has become a standalone facility. The initiative to date has brought 1.3 million people in 6 countries on the African continent into banking, with the focus on young people, women, smallholder farmers, also some small businesses. In order to understand what works and what doesn't, research has been an important element. One of the researches that we conducted on an annual basis is the State of the Savings and Retail Banking Sector report that looked at the impact that the network of member institutions on the African continent is already generating, but also lays out the barriers that the sector is still facing. So last year, the sector research focused on small and medium-sized enterprises. And so some of the findings of this research I would like to share here with you. Apart from the fact that many of the businesses on the African continent are informal and are not properly served by the formal financial sector, there are 80% of our network members that serve the formal businesses that we are here talking about. And so they require business records to allow businesses to access credit. And we find that there are huge information asymmetries to be able to assess the scale of small business activities. We also saw that 60% of the institutions use credit bureaus to get more insights into small business information. But here again, the information is rather fragmented. Almost all of them do conduct demand-side surveys, but as we know, these surveys are taking place very irregularly. And then we have the challenge that although the financial institutions sit on a huge amount of data, these data sit with different functions. They sit in different departments. They sit with the branch managers. They sit with the agents. And not many institutions really have the capacity to bring these data together to create a holistic picture of the needs, the financial needs, but also non-financial needs of small businesses. And so we need to look at ways how we can overcome these data asymmetries. In addition, we're seeing that there is a lot of very insightful research flying around, but financial institutions very often face difficulties to really make use of research reports or huge, vast data sets. And so this is where LIFT comes in. We've been trying to look for ways to bring together sector data onto a single platform by working with LIFT on collecting financial diaries at the time on young people who do also have very rich financial and economic lives, but then combine diaries data with macro level Findex data, national sector household data, demographic data, and also add insights from qualitative focus group discussions. So there is a prototype available in the Nigerian market. We have tested this prototype. It's the persona segmentation toolkit for Nigerian sector players, where the financial service providers, but also the central bank, the financial sector deepening as a market shaper, can make use and access. One of the beauties of this platform is that it is built on Finbit. So it also allows for real-time insights by data being self-reported and fed into an application. And we believe there is a huge opportunity for extending this platform. Yesterday, we were talking about data lakes to provide a variety of sector holders with access not only to financial data, not only to small business diaries data, but also to livelihood data that can be of relevance to skill set builders, impact data that can be of relevance to development finance institutions or whoever wants to certify green or gender smart products. So I will pause here. And I think this is a good moment for LIFT.
Well, and before we do that, Weselina, one of the things I think is very interesting here, you were connecting it in the conversation yesterday about how we use data. And one of the things, the reason that we worked on diaries was trying to make sure that our digital data trails actually included all of the data and not just the digital data, and found in Kenya, one of the places where digital finance has penetrated the most is that for these firms in Kenya, less than 25% of their transactions were digital. And roughly 60% of them were still cash, even in the most digitized. But then also the challenge is that a lot of the people who are still using cash aren't creating any data trails at all. It's so expensive to get the data. What's been your experience with getting people to self-report? Do you feel like the self-reporting is enough, and that people use the tools enough to gather that data to give you the complete picture?
I think it requires a lot of hand-holding and a lot of data vetting, a lot of monitoring, and that comes at a cost. And the question is, who does it? Who has the capacity, or who will build the capacity for people to engage in this process? I think LIFT has some good ideas about how we can incentivize people to self-report. It sounds very beautiful, but it's not as easy as it sounds, obviously.
Indeed. I think that is probably a good transition point, Anne-Marie, to talk about the work that LIFT has been doing to try and build digital data trails for people who don't have digital data trails using something like diaries.
Yes, hello. We're LIFT. It's short for Low Income Financial Transformation. We are a one-trick pony company. We founded in 2015. And we actually consider being a one-trick pony a very good thing, because the trick is so rich. There's really enormous amount of use cases and applications. I mean, basically, the three people just talking before me presented all something showing about business diaries and how it gave academic insights, how it is actually giving information to an organization that is just started helping 1,200 entrepreneurs so far. And of course, 1.4 billion people somehow indirectly do benefit from these diaries, because these financial institutions have more fine-grained, detailed information about customers. Let me quickly explain what diaries exactly are. I'm sure you've heard of financial diaries and portfolios of the poor. We like to use the word diaries because it doesn't only cover financial or economic issues. It could be almost anything. It could be nutrition, energy usage, whatever. The essence of it is that an individual or a business or a group or whatever unit, they report about their ups and downs over time, almost on a daily basis. So in case of financial data, you record all your income per transaction. You can, of course, combine some transactions. You report about all your expenses, the amount for what you spend the money, whether it was business or private, and in what form also, if it was cash, digital or bank transfer, or indeed in kind. It's also tracked by many, particularly by farmers. People also even in the standard application, they track about the hours that they work. And that has shown a lot of interesting insights. Most people reporting have no idea how much time they spend on which activity. And we almost always hear in the field that they say, I always thought there's an unlimited amount of hours in my day. And now I realize actually I have to sort of be careful where I allocate my time as well. So we started in 2015 as a research company, and our motto is listening to the unheard. And we've served really very honorable clients, 3 of them sitting next to me, several foundations, up to central banks and other government agencies. But actually, in our first years, we realized more and more that our real customers are those people who provide the data. Let me try to explain. So at first we were sort of collecting data. We were trying to make the research interesting for the participants, just to make sure that they would stay with it until the end of the year. And now we think what's really important is that those people who report also get access to that data and can use that data and inform themselves. And this is particularly important for businesses. And I think Lerato and the video also showed that having the information about your company at your fingertips makes it possible to take proper decisions, to take informed decisions, and it makes it possible for you to demonstrate to others what you're like. And so even we see with employees, we see with people who are workers, they sometimes use their data to show to employers. We've seen some participants in the Small Firm Diaries. I won't disclose even the country, but this was a small garage. They were going to get somebody who wanted to take a share in the business. They used all their financial diaries data to decide what the value of the business was. And the investors who were from the US, they thought it was a very reasonable way to calculate. We've seen the Small Firm Diaries participants use the data at the tax office and say, here, this is what I really earn, you're overcharging me. And there are many, many other use cases or demonstrations of people getting data empowerment through this process. Now, of course, the title of our session, I should have, yeah, I'm doing nothing right. I don't have a video. Yeah. The title of this session is How Microfinance Institutions Can Serve Micro and Small and Medium Enterprises. And indeed, the business diaries can really help microfinance institutions. We have some microfinance institutions who want to offer this tracking to their clients, just as giving them something extra, maybe as a way of keeping clients engaged. Some others want to offer it to people who are for the first time getting an individual loan. They insist you keep your diaries as well, so that we can more easily track the loan. And then the big application is that we have built a loan platform, but Heimanot is going to talk about it soon. The mechanism, for instance, in Ethiopia, we have a memorandum of understanding. It's all about to start with the microfinance umbrella IMBE, the Microfinance Association. They have 51 members, and so far 5 of their members have been invited to participate in this. On the other side, there are several NGOs who are going to offer to the young participants who got entrepreneurship training, mostly women, they are going to offer them the FinBit, and through the FinBit, after say 3 to 6 months, these reporters, these businesses, they can, in their FinBit environment, they can apply for a loan. They can click on the loan platform and apply for a loan. Then the loan platform will filter who they are matched with, which microfinance institution is capable of taking that person as a client. Also providing a lot of efficiency for the microfinance institution. And the last thing I want to say is that this is, so as I said, our one trick pony, our one thing is very multi-purpose. And we would really like to suggest to this audience, incorporate this in the way you do data collection in your country and enable people to collect that data themselves, for themselves, but also your central bank will be able to understand what is going on, what kind of challenges different people have. And an international investor or a large international NGO will be able to design their programs better. There are a lot of different ways, and we also think it's very important for different organizations to share data rather than each run your own survey. You know, there's a lot of cost in setting up something at the beginning, and if everything is in a central place and visible to all, it can be very affordable for all.
Emery, in a lot of places, I think a lot of financial institutions would say record keeping is the customer's problem, not our problem. So you don't go to very many banks in Luxembourg or like giving away, I don't know what, does QuickBooks own the European market too? Like they don't give people QuickBooks and insist. What do you think is the thinking behind it? Financial institution taking on the burden of pushing their customers into this kind of record keeping?
Okay, well, the first reason they're doing this is simply because they need much more data. At the moment, they spend a lot of time trying to, you know, drag out something and get people to say how much their revenue last year was, or to say what their profit margin is. And I think most financial institutions know that this is an estimation and it may be way off what it really is. And so this data helps them to really see, you know, what's going on, see the fluctuations. But the other reason, maybe Tim, you didn't report about this, is there's been a study done. We were involved in it, and Financial Access Initiative.
I promise that was not a setup.
And there is a finding, and let me not tell you what the finding is, but
I'll go ahead and insert that in, Marie, since you did bring it up. And you know, one of the things that we have been concerned about when we're doing diary studies is how much does doing diaries change what people do. And therefore, you're studying not the actual businesses, you're studying businesses who happen to do better, more complete record keeping. And so we did do an RCT that is just finished. There are no results published. I've only seen like the early rounds of our data in cleaning it out. But we are seeing from an RCT in Uganda with women market vendors that people who just participate in diaries, you know, use the app to record everything, don't see a lot of changes versus people who are just visited 3 times over the course of a year. But there's a second group who we use the data from diaries so that each time you went back for the following interview, you showed them their data back to them, as well as the comparison to other like businesses so they can see, am I doing better or worse or the same as other businesses? How are my revenues changing over time? And we do see that those businesses that get the reports do show a statistically significant change in their revenues and profits from getting, you know, very, very simple reports. These are not sophisticated reports. It's basically just a series of bars on a bar chart that shows how are you doing versus where you were last month and versus the average of other businesses?
Yeah, so basically, if you are a microfinance institution, we believe this is the most affordable, most cost-effective business development service that you can offer your clients. And it's really truly scalable. And in fact, if you sort of start rolling it out, it will possibly grow by itself. But we
That's probably a good time for I'm not sure the other video that puts a little bit more specifics on what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about a Business Diaries platform.
FinBit was actually a suggestion from our own financial diaries research participants. They often tell us that they appreciate the process of the financial diaries. It helps them get an overview of their finances. It gives them a certain calm to know where their money goes. And at the end, even after the conclusion of financial diaries research, many of them asked us if they could continue. Inspired by the desire to provide financial empowerment and a platform for unheard voices, we formed the company FinBit. The FinBit app is the main part of the whole platform. Developed by our dedicated team, it is a tool that people can use to record all their bookkeeping and to get more involved in managing their finances. It makes it easier to find information that users have recorded, to keep track of their incomes, expenses, savings, loans, employees for their businesses, and other important indicators. Comparing the returns from various activities and tracking payment for hours worked becomes more straightforward with the app. Therefore, it can contribute to improving profitability and to growing their business. FinBit provides organizations with a console to continuously track their target group. It helps them monitor and evaluate their programs and get instant data from the field. It allows them to assess whether interventions are influencing aspects such as family income, business revenue, or overall quality of life. Part of the platform is a portal that will have segmented results based on different types of demographics. Organizations can further communicate with a specific target group about the results they see using the portal. They can identify the financial trends, patterns, and get an overall understanding of the project implementation. It also has case studies where organizations can get insights to profiles and visualize the financial trend of the groups they target. The personal information of users is not shared with any third party unless the user requests for a loan. As a client or an organization, you can customize the app using the console to tailor it to your needs and requirements. There are multiple components available throughout the app which can be adjusted. You can add or remove components based on your preferences. The customization options are easy to use and do not require any coding knowledge. You can customize the app's appearance, functionality, and features to match your brand and meet the needs of your users, making it a flexible and modular system. FinBit also has developed a new loan platform, which is a marketplace where users can upload their data and apply for loans through a streamlined process. The system screens and forwards applications that meet the basic criteria of financial service providers, offering a more efficient and reliable screening process to bring people who are excluded to the financial sector. It enhances the availability of data for banks and microfinance institutions, allowing them to improve their screening process and make more informed decisions. Users support their loan requirements by using their FinBit data, demonstrating their financial history and ability to repay loans with ease. The platform allows them to apply once but reach multiple financial service providers whose criteria they meet. This not only benefits users by simplifying the application process, but also provides a range of services to lenders, including primary screening, eligibility, and credit scoring. In general, the platform is well positioned to make it easier for people to get credit and build their financial future. We look forward to partner with financial institutions and encourage them to join the platform.
Kylie Ying has worked at many interesting places, such as MIT.
Well, one of the things that we know from studies of small businesses is two places that they really struggle around the world when we do surveys of small business and business practices are record keeping and marketing. And so congratulations to Anne-Marie and Heimanot and being a small business that's hitting on both of those, helping people record keeping and marketing. So I'm particularly proud that we're pretty close to on time, and this is the part where we have made available for questions. I do have some questions myself, but also want to make sure that we give time for any questions from the audience. So we do have a microphone out there if anybody has questions. We've got a couple. Great.
Thank you. I'm working for a financial institution, so I was triggered by some of your questions. I wonder how it works because sometimes it's really, well, in many occasions, it's really on purpose why they don't want to register and work with diaries, because they want to hide from the taxes. I mean, I assume NYU is New York, so American consumers have been for ages used to their checks and their credit cards. But I'm working in Latin America, and we really notice, for example, in Peru, really notice they have three different kinds of financial statements. One for the taxes, SUNAT, one audited, and one for themselves. So I perhaps Africa is an ideal playground, or they just don't know, but even the Dutch banks, ING, Rabobank, we're not allowed to do this. We're not even allowed to do this for privacy reasons. So it's very wondering. So there's very interesting going out of, and even the Germans do a lot in cash money, Italians even more, because on purpose they say, okay, cash, I don't need to register. So I wonder, how do you deal with privacy regulations? And how do you take it up? Because I know from other countries in Latin America, they're not allowed to do this, the microfinance institutions, the NGOs with financial credit arms and business development support. So they have to do like more randomized. They have to do more like by proxy and general, but not by, as I said, individual customer and really data related to the individual customer so you can track it down for other purposes. So I wonder how that works in your field, because it seems you have much more room than we do.
I mean, I will say, you noticed from the earlier map, Colombia is one of the countries where we did the Small Firm Diaries, and I think is pretty emblematic of a lot of Latin America. It is that we are working on bringing Small Firm Diaries to the US, and that is one of the questions we're being asked by businesses that might participate is, are you going to show this to the IRS, is the name of our tax authority? Because no small business really reports absolutely everything to the tax authorities. And so it is a very real question about how you manage some of those things. I mean, I think we're fairly early on in that process of recognizing what is the reality when we get to many of these countries where there are not highly organized systems and there's not consumer protection from the tax agency itself. Is a problem. That being said, I also think that offering businesses the tools they need to keep their own records and better understand their businesses, I don't think we can shy away from that, from the negative possible consequences that can happen, that the benefits of any business understanding its cash flows are too large to avoid it until we have some better data about where those threats potentially come from. It is the case, too, though, that we find in all diary studies that when you're looking at it from an academic perspective, we always throw away the first 2 months of data. And we throw away not just because people are learning it, but because we know people aren't telling us the truth for the first couple of months. They're truly trying to find out, like, who are these guys and what are they really doing? And why do we do diaries and not just self-reports, but with a relational support is because that helps people get over some of those trust barriers to say, the data that I'm reporting, I am reporting for my own benefit and it's helping me, and that the people that we're interacting with are trustworthy. And I don't think there's any way to get around the blended, it's such a cliche these days, touch and tech. But I think that is real, that you have to build up trust with the people that you're working with, and that involves human interaction. Let me turn that over to others. Any thoughts on data protections that go along with some of the challenges of, if you're going to gather data, then you do have to be thinking about data protection.
All right, thank you. First of all, when you're using the mobile app, none of your data is being sent to any kind of financial institutions unless you're specifically requesting a loan. So the data you're reporting is only for yourself, and it's translated to a central server with end-to-end encryption. So it's not going to be basically hacked. We try to at our utmost effort to make it really secure, so that way people know when they're submitting data, it's just going to the central server, so that in case they lose their phone, in case they change the app, they can access it again. But otherwise, only when they're applying for a loan, their information is going to be sent to the financial service provider. You might have seen, for example, for IMBE and different specific clients, that they have members that they are agreeing in the beginning that their data is being shared with their provider, but that's not being given to us. So on certain occasions that they will know, the individuals, that their data is being sent to that specific organizations. But for general users, that data is just going to be used anonymously for just general research purpose, and then personally identifying information is basically stored separately. So no personal information is being leaked to the system, and anyone knowing what you do, how much you make, and so on. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, and in addition to that, as far as the persona segmentation tool is concerned, that is the tool that loads diaries data in addition to financial sector data. All these data are anonymized. Is that English? Mm-hmm. Yes. So what the financial service provider sees are personas, so profiles of customers, a young woman in the rural market, not having access to formal services, but maybe to mobile digital services, living in a family, running a small business. So to help business development people, so operational people within the banking, within the bank or the microfinance institution, to design strategies, to design products and services around these personas, and to take these insights to their management for a new strategy. So it's all anonymized, and it is important that we make sure that these data are protected.
There was another question over here.
Okay. Let me stand because I think I'm far away from. Okay, I work for FSP in Kenya, and I'm happy you've talked of a very high percent in terms of digital transformation in our place. Now, the question I would like to ask Weselina probably is, the presentation is nice and great. You're doing a lot of work, but there seems to be a missing link between whatever it is done on your side to us on the ground, the FSPs. Because how do this data is available, the market data availability on our side is really what is lacking. when we use Association of Microfinance Institution, Central Bank, FSD, how do we people on the ground feel the presence of the research and the small diaries that you're working in? I've been in the industry for over 10 years, but the presence of what it is done is a missing link on the ground. Thank you.
So the idea that we had, thank you for the question. The idea that we had was to really bring together data that are already available in the market. So in the case of Kenya, FSD Kenya is conducting financial sector research. You have the FinScope surveys in Kenya. There are the Findex data from the World Bank that tell a story about how small businesses, low-income people might want to use of financial services, how their spending behavior is, how their savings behavior is, how they're generating income, how they're already accessing financial services. So the idea that we had is to combine the various sources of data, including financial diaries that I'm sure already exist in Kenya, not only through the work that Tim and L-IFT are doing, but also other research firms. And so to create a open space, a marketplace, an open source marketplace that the various sector players can have access to. So the central bank, the microfinance institutions, the associations, but then obviously this requires training and understanding and how to make use of these personas and profiles that are being created. We are aware that there are different needs. So, I mean, L-IFT is well prepared to tailor the platform to meet these various needs. But it requires a multi-stakeholder effort that brings together the various players so that we better understand the needs that each sector player has, and also that we can ensure that people are motivated to feed the application on a regular basis. Because I think the beauty of it is that it's very dynamic, and it can provide a real-time snapshot of how different groups of people, so small businesses, rural farmers, women, make use of financial services and other services as well.
I would just add to that we published the full set of data for Kenya, smallfirmdiaries.org/Kenya. You can find the full country report and the financial services report from the study that we did, but also working very closely with Financial Sector Deepening Kenya and their FinScope survey and their MSE tracker to bring all of that together and make that available. But if there's anything that you have questions about from the data that we've gathered, I would love to hear from you and find out what you're interested in from the data. There's another question here.
Hi, Benedict Wahler from Consumer Centrics. I mean, we work in countries like Nigeria, but also some that are more considered advanced, like Central Asia or Turkey. But at the end of the day, a lot of the challenges that we've heard today still remain relevant. And Lerato, what you told us with IMBE's work, I found really inspiring in a sense that maybe, I mean, maybe it's clear to everyone else in the room, but to me, it sounded like you're going towards a new template for really effective business development support, in a sense, almost taking kind of a franchising approach that's maybe pushing the envelope a little bit too far, but a template of how you, as someone who wants to, ideally even in a high impact space like early childhood development, work on a business, can make it work, backed by evidence and the experience of people that have come before. So I'm just very keen if I was just completely oblivious to other examples, is there something else that's going on like this? Like taking these kind of blueprints and pushing them out to women and men who want to be entrepreneurially active, because that sounds like, especially if we then also link it to the financiers as something with huge potential.
Why don't we go ahead and pass the mic? There's one other question there, and Lerato, I'll let you answer, but make sure that we're.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to come back to the trickiness of the working capital finance. And now that you've accumulated all of the data from wherever you've conducted the diaries, I'm curious to know if you've come with any insights of when and how to navigate that labyrinth. And is it more based on unpredictable cash income, more unpredictable cash outflows, lack of discipline, or the nature of the business cycle? There's so many pitfalls there. So I'm just curious of any insights you might have.
Sure. Thank you for that compliment. I think because of our high unemployment rate in South Africa, all of us working in the development space have been forced to think quite creatively about how we create livelihoods outside of formal employment. So I think there are a few activities of this nature that are trying to address social challenges by creating employment or enterprise opportunities. That work remains pretty nascent, unfortunately, in South Africa, but we're very keen to sort of share our learnings in other sectors where relevant. On the working capital question, I think having this sort of data is providing more insights on what exactly do we mean about cyclicality of revenue. So for instance, in early childhood development, we know now that there are dips in revenue in the June holidays. That's the long holidays, and parents pull their kids out of school even though they're supposed to pay. We see the dip in December, January. So instead of opening in January, the centers only open in February because parents don't have money to pay the fees in January, but also the entrepreneur hasn't saved enough to have the food and everything that she needs to be open. So I think we're now in a position through the data to come up with solutions to manage for cash smoothing. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great point, Lerato, and we see quite similar things in the data, cyclicality coming from, time that we don't expect. So that the furniture business in Kenya is highly sensitive to the school calendar, which if you had asked me, like, those two industries have nothing to do with each other. But of course, because when school fees are due, nobody has money to buy furniture. And so all of the furniture makers know that they don't make any sales in September. And that's something that was only evident to us by doing diaries. Like, why does everybody's business drop so dramatically in these months? But I think the other piece of it on the working capital is there is information that can lead to better risk management working capital, and it's in the supplier's hands. The suppliers know who the good credit risks are, but they don't have interest in running credit programs. So to me, one of the big possible steps forward is how do we get the credit providers partnered with the suppliers so that you take advantage of the expertise and the knowledge that's there and figure out who can absorb what kind of capital when, and who has incentive to repay. Because if the supplier provides a really important enforcement mechanism on the back end. And then I just want to close out on your question about one of the things I'm really impressed with what IMBE is doing is it's a middle ground between, oh, we're just going to have you come into a classroom and we're going to lecture you for a couple of days on how to run a business, versus the franchise model, which I think has really struggled in a lot of places because it requires such templatization in places where there absolutely requires a lot of variability. And so this, I think, helps to provide a little bit of, it is guidance and it is structure, but it isn't, you must do things our way when there's such variation. And so I think there's a lot of possibilities to build off there of interest. And I just hope we, in this conversation have inspired people to think about how do we deliver just-in-time business training services and record keeping, and how do we solve some of these working capital problems? And hopefully it's an interest to you to use diaries as tools for both of those. Thank you so much for coming to join us. We are at lunchtime. We did really very well keeping it on time based on what I've seen from the other session. So kudos to us. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the panelists.